If you're watching this video, then it's likely that you've decided that your one true calling in life is to become a saint, and we all know the fastest route to sainthood is to start a cult. And although that is frowned upon in normal society, in this game it's exactly what we're after. So I'm here to give you some tips and tricks to make sure you get the most out of your first playthrough of becoming saint. Let's get started. The first thing to know about becoming saint is that your choices actually matter. There are 10 different personality types that could be attributed to you, everything from capitalist to cult leader, and the decisions you make and the rules you implement will define what kind of leader you are. Not only will those decisions define what kind of leader you are, they'll also define who's willing to follow you, so choose carefully. My recommendation is to go on gut instinct. Choose the one that you're drawn to first, because that makes it easier not to flip-flop later on, because if you change your mind about something, you may attract new followers, but followers can also leave you if they start to disagree with your decisions too strongly. Once you've implemented your first set of rules and been assigned your personality type, you'll start to attract followers, so it's time to assess their strengths and weaknesses. Each unit is effective in many different ways. For example, some work best from a distance whilst others need to get close up and personal. But it's not only that, each unit can have synergies between themselves. So when you're going into battle, sometimes it's best to put those together to be more effective. Not only that, but some units will be particularly effective against specific enemies. So when you're looking at converting a town, check out who you're fighting against to decide who you're going to take with you to battle. So you've got these new followers and you decide to march on your first town to convert them to this wonderful new movement that you've created, but you very quickly realize that your new followers also need feeding. The food in this game is essentially your fuel. The more followers you have, the more food they'll need. So be careful. Although you may want to feed your new followers plentifully, make sure you've got enough food in storage for your next march. Even after you've conquered a town, you'll be given the choice about whether you want to feed the enemies of this newly conquered realm. It seems like you shouldn't, but if you decide not to, your charisma will take a hit. Every time you conquer a town, you'll be rewarded with food, but remember your decisions mean something in this game. So if there are harsh political conditions, your food yield from each town may not be as much as you previously expected. Not enough food means you can't feed your followers as much as you want to, which will mean you'll take a hit to your charisma, which leads me to my next point. Your charisma is essentially how your followers perceive their glorious leader in this game. Not only that, but you also use your charisma in battle. You can use it to curse your enemies and bless your allies. Be very, very careful. On multiple occasions in this game, I've let my charisma get to 0, and that means game over. So you guessed it, in order to get more food, you need to convert more towns, and in order to convert more towns, you need to go to battle. If this is your first playthrough of the game, I recommend you use the auto battler. This essentially allows your units to move automatically and attack independently, but don't worry, you can still intervene. Actions like cursing your enemies, blessing your allies, and special attacks can still be utilized by you, and you can even direct specific units to specific areas of the map. One of the tactics I used when I was first starting out was to curse early. Curse your enemy units very early in the battle to weaken them so your units can move in and dispatch them much more quickly. But be careful, cursing costs charisma. And remember, if your charisma goes to 0, it's game over. As you expand your reach by converting new towns, you'll also get the opportunity to make new decisions. All of those new decisions and rules will attract a new set of followers, all of which have their own abilities. Each time you're looking at converting a new town, make sure you check out their enemy units and then choose from your followers who is going to be most effective. This can be based on the synergies they have with each other or which enemy units they're most effective against. Also, when you're deciding on which town you're going to convert next, really think about what it is you're looking to achieve. The distance of the town from your current base could cost you more food to get there, and if you're low on food reserves, that could be difficult. Some towns have a greater yield of food but have more power, and some towns have cardinals. All of these things come into play. For example, cardinals are like a little bonus on your journey to becoming saints. The other thing to consider is the town is already guided by one of 3 powers: the Pope, the Emperor, or the merchants. If you focus too much on just one of those, they may decide to stop you sooner rather than later. In the early part of the game, I recommend you focus on towns that are close to you with a low power score. The closer they are, the less food you need to get there, and the lower the power score, the easier they are to convert. And remember, the more towns you convert, the more followers you can gain, and the more food you can produce to feed those followers. I have to be honest with you, when I first played this game, I struggled. I died a lot, and I mean a lot, but death is part of the journey, and you should be able to learn from the mistakes of the previous game to make sure your next run is even better. I really wish I'd have known these tips and tricks when I first started playing, because the game is a million times more enjoyable when you get a really good run. If you are still struggling with the game, here's some final tips to make sure you're getting the most out of it, but most importantly, that you're having fun. The first one is give it a go on easy mode. Easy mode is easier, and there's no shame in it. I don't care what everyone else says. Gaming is about having fun. Just whilst you get used to the mechanics of the game, get used to the movements, get used to the strategies, give it a go on easy mode. I promise you, you'll have a great time. The second thing is for when you're in those early battles. As I said, use the auto battler, and curses and buffs are your friend. Use them very, very early in the game. Right at the start, curse your enemy units and buff your own units to make them have a little bit more resilience. That's going to make the battle much more simple and much easier whilst you're getting used to the mechanics of the game. Also, when you're in the arena, look for a height advantage. If you see a platform, you can direct your unit to it so they have the high ground, and if there's obstacles, you can put them behind it to give them that little bit more protection. Putting units behind obstacles is particularly effective if they have range attacks, because you can hit but not always be hit. As I said before, start by conquering towns that are close to you. Move in a nice pretty little line, because the less distance you have to move, the less food costs you have, and the more you can keep in your storage banks. Always remember, food is your fuel. Finally, and we have to thank the devs for this one, the game will actually help you by projecting the amount of food you'll have in storage after the next meditation. So keep this in mind when you're planning your next strategic attack. If you're running low on food, you might want to look for a town that has lower power and higher yield that's quite close by, because that's the one that's going to get you through the next bit of the game. If you've got any tips and tricks that you think I've missed out that new players should know about, please feel free to drop them down in the comments. I hope you guys grow to love this game as much as I can, and remember, death is part of the process. That is so important. Enjoy the game.